Historically, you've always had artists that come up and then people copy the artist. And I suppose AI is a little bit like that, where you have an artist which is really well established, and then you have sort of 5 that come along and try to be a bit like that. So AI is kind of like the trying to follow, because obviously it's always copying something. It's how it can be completely original. And I think, to be a big artist these days, or any days from the past and into the future, you need to be original and stand out. And those are the things that will have longevity, and things that stand up. And hasn't been created yet for the future, but who is going to be the next Ed Sheeran, or who's going to be the next whatever? Well, that's going to be created, and maybe AI can help an artist in some technology.
Or even just like helping with writer's block, right? Like those leap off points. It's really helpful to kind of be able to enlist something that can kind of, where as much as it's great to work with other people, it can also be not so nice to work with other people, depending on how complex those relationships are and how much you all agree to how you're going to work, etc.
How would we know if an artist or writer has been using AI to assist, that how much is truly their work and how much has been used by
Then this is
AI?
the usual...
And how will we know the difference?
You'd have to get an AI robot to analyze it, to go, well, actually,
is that the future?
There's 80% of that is like an Ed Sheeran song, so that's a ripoff. I don't know.
And also, how do you go about licensing it from a supervision perspective, and who owns all the rights in the sense if this really does come into play? Because obviously this has already caused like a lot of the strikes that's happened recently, in a sense of that the studios were wanting to own a lot of the likeness of the actors and actresses, so they could use based on their likeness and multiply that and use it for whenever they want. Isn't that the basis of it? If I'm wrong, correct me.
That's one aspect of it, for sure.
Yeah, there was quite a few different things, and there's an argument over who owns the rights to all these things.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been sorted yet, and there's no sort of worldwide legal standpoint on this. And I think they're trying to rush it through. There's stuff going through Europe at the minute where a lot of the councils and different boards are getting together to try and legalize where we stand with this, because no one knows.
No one knows.
no one
really
knows. No, not at all.
We're just trying to figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I guess, we've got all of these like amazing platforms where you can like pay a subscription like you would with a Netflix or whatever, and then you've got access to samples and loops, and the people that provide those are providing it knowing that they're going to get a piece of the generated income from subscriptions, which means that then from a licensing perspective, you're not having to worry about it. And my feeling is, and I could be completely wrong because I'm not in that world specifically, that's a lot of what kind of how the model of like AI generated like music from scratch almost, like how that is set up. And then it kind of also begs the question in that whole kind of like art and theft versus inspiration of like, so an artist that's a visual artist that uses collage and kind of archive images, does that make them less of an artist because they're already borrowing stuff that exists, even if they're doing like amazing gold relief, like hand-drawn detailing within the piece? Does that make it less original because it's using something else that already exists? And I think like music borrows from itself a lot anyway. But this concept of it not being human somehow is the thing that feels like it tips it into that like, should it be like, legitimized? Does that make it real art? All that kind of stuff, but like, if you think about ghostwriters and that whole side of stuff, artists have been using that methodology for a really long time and not crediting those people or,
I had a funny thought just then. Is AI like a sort of a doping equivalent of being an athlete? So let's say you're an athlete and you do the Tour de France and you dope.
Interesting.
And it's like, is AI kind of the equivalent of that if you're a songwriter and you've gone, I'm having a real writer's block this week, right? Write me a song like Bob Dylan. Pops out song like Bob Dylan. It's just is that cheating for one? Where does the legal standpoint on that, and so on and so forth. So it's
and in script writing as well was another aspect where this was also a huge factor where AI was potentially going to be replacing script writers to write a lot of the shows and things for them. So where is it at actually now? Like, I know agreements were reached or in the process? I feel like agreements have been reached, haven't they?
With the writer's strike?
With the writer's strike.
Yeah, that's all sorted,
and now
I
they're
believe.
starting to ramp up production.
And the actors as well they're back on board. But when is the next one? We don't know. I think Hollywood is it has that point. It's like, we're not going to give them an inch. That's sort of probably where they were at the beginning, and then it went on and on and on, and then they had to give an inch, and it's just like now, it's like, oh, when's the next one going to be? That's what I personally dreading, is if they go, right, well, we got that, now let's do this, and then it's going to put things on ice again. Let's just hope not.
Yeah, not long after COVID as well, really.
No, absolutely.
It's like we've all finally found our feet after that, and then.
Yeah, a lot of good comparisons to COVID in the sense that COVID did put the brakes on and things obviously stopped, and we survived that. And then we get back on our feet, and then the writer's strike happens. So, I mean, of course, there was other things going on in other parts of the world. It's not just Hollywood and all the rest of it, but it did affect stuff over here, certainly
massively.
Yeah. How would you say, Liz?
Just like a complete, just a very stripped back offering of like what was available to work on, and even so that obviously things like the like real world content, so your documentaries and docs and all that kind of stuff obviously were still being made, but I also feel like there was this real like retention of kind of like people wanting to be able to, companies being able to retain money to be able to put into like the more like the heavier hitting like scripted content, not knowing when all that was going to happen. So it's not like all of a sudden you've got opportunity to work on like documentaries and unscripted content that suddenly has like wonderful budget that it's never had before. But also then you've got like way more competition, even in terms of like directors and like who's willing to work on what. And so it kind of like threw the whole landscape into this really strange kind of place where, it felt a little bit like tumbleweeds. It's not to say that there wasn't stuff going on, there was, but it felt like there was much less to go around because all the top people were kind of doing stuff they wouldn't have done before. Does that make sense?
I totally agree with that. In fact, it's a good time to get hold of music supervisors because they didn't have any work.
That's what I spent time doing, was just connecting, because everyone was at home. Yeah. No one was working on stuff. Yeah. But it was difficult for a lot of film studios because of the insurances and things like that with COVID and the different... all the things they needed to put in place to protect their crew and staff and everything, and all the testing that had to be done and the isolation that needed to be taken care of as well. And it was just, no one knew what was going on. A bit like AI, really, right now.
Yes, very similar.
No one has a clue.
Back to back.
A lot of unknowns, yeah.
And not to throw oil on the fire, but at the minute, with all the dreadful things that are going on in the world, to borrow money is more expensive than ever. So there's a lot less money being pumped into projects as well to add to the mix of that. So there's, I mean, particularly in this country, there's, we have the channels that we know, but how long those channels are going to stick around for, in terms of as we knew it, is good. We'll find out. Yeah. But I think there's not so much money flowing into those channels that there used to be, because to borrow money for projects is very expensive.
Yeah. So let's delve into...
on a happy note.
Yeah.
Let's uplift things.
Well, the final happy thing about the AI that I just wanted to touch on, what I really loved, there was a film I worked on last year, that, like, for the first time in the edit, because we were using quite a lot of archive material, and they were actually able to remove the music that was in the background that wasn't necessary, that was going to be incredibly problematic, both for the budget and time, and even figuring out what it was, because I think it was like 5 seconds or whatever. And obviously you've got levels of like that you can achieve best endeavors, etc., but it's never my favorite position to be in, to get, you want to be able to just clear and pay for, or know that it's it's fine. Yeah, exactly. And so the fact that you can now do that with AI on the kind of like, never mind the music creative scale, but that element with music and separating out of stems, I think is the win, my final note on AI that I want to share.
I would like to add to that, and I totally agree. It's been a brilliant thing for us because we have a lot of vintage music, and the one question is like, do you have stems of this? And we're like, but this was recorded in 1967. That it was done on 4 tracks, and the tapes are long gone and what have you. But now we've been able to go in and we've been able to strip out the vocals, with the permission of the artist or the estates, and make really good instrumental versions of these things. And instrumentals are used a lot more than you think.
Yeah, 100%.
Because obviously you have dialogue and you have other things going on in whatever the scene is. So sometimes there is that time where the vocal just really gets in the way. Yeah. And you need it stripping out. So it's been an absolute godsend.
And let's be honest, sorting through the catalogue. When you're trying to find like a track that's similar to this or to that, and you've got like thousands of tracks sitting in your database, trying to sort through all that sometimes, just implementing like some of the AI software that is out there has been a godsend in that sense.
Yes.
Just to organise through it all and get what you need quickly has been useful.
To name a few, there's a new one called Bridge, which I've been trying out, which is very good. Bridge Audio to store all your stuff. And Disco is the one we all use.
Disco, yeah. Disco. How many conversations have we had as supervisors about this? You need to get on Disco.
I need Carl.
How many times?
I need Carl from Disco, if you're listening, to sponsor me, because
I think we all need to be sponsored.
But
we all promote it.
It is good though.
We got to a point. I think we got up to about 2,500 tracks, and Jim and I, my partner in Pop Up, I
am always over the limit as well. Charge me.
Always going that red banner over the top.
Yeah, always.
Well, we personally got to sort of about 2.5.
We're going to get bills now, aren't we?
Yeah. About 2,500 tracks. Our brains stopped remembering things, and obviously we're in Disco, so we started to really work with doing playlists of certain things and certain keywords, where that if we are on a search, then it's like, well, we pitched that for that show, and that was the keywords that was used for that. So it really helps us, and to say, okay, we pitched that one, but these other ones we pitched as well. Oh yeah, that's great. And I'd forgotten about that one, because the human brain can only take so much.
It's like when friends say like, oh, we should get you as like, if we're going to go to a quiz about music, we'll bring you along. I'm like, no, don't do that. No, I don't know everything about music. In fact, I don't know a lot of things about music that I'm not that interested in. I will learn if I have to learn, but please don't see me as like the complete oracle for all music that has ever existed in the whole world. It's not real. Because
the minute that you don't get something right, it'd be like, you work in music. You should know that.
Come on.
It's just way too much unnecessary pressure.
Yeah.
To be